Our journey began with a change of planes in Newark and an overnight flight to Amsterdam. We arrived in Amsterdam bright and early Sunday morning and were whisked off by representatives of Viking and taken to our awaiting ship, the Baldur. After a quick look around the ship, we took a short break to enjoy the views of the city. The main train station is the city center of Amsterdam. Across the square stood the magnificent St. Nicholas Church, the first of many churches we would soon see. One of the first things we noticed was the amount of bicycles. Cycling in Amsterdam is the most authentic way to see the city. Amsterdam is routinely rated as the world's second most bike-friendly city, just behind Copenhagen. The Netherlands has a population of 17.2 million people, and about a quarter of those cycle every day. There are actually more bikes than people. Amsterdam is perfectly set up for getting on a bike. There are around 320 miles of dedicated cycle lanes. Cycling is deeply ingrained into the Dutch psyche at all levels of society. Not surprising when you consider how flat most of the country is. We strolled down the red light district, one of the most talked about neighborhoods in the city, due to its housing of the world's oldest professions. But we were only able to get a glimpse of a bakery. With so many bikes around, it is not surprising to note that bike theft in Amsterdam is rampant. Over 200 bikes a day are stolen. A visit to Amsterdam is not complete without a canal cruise, and it is really not to be missed. The tour departed in front of the St. Nicholas Basilica. Amsterdam has one of the largest historic city centers of Europe. Fortunately, there was no major bombing during World War II, so they suffered no damage. The canals have led Amsterdam to become known as the Venice of the North, and thus a trip to Amsterdam is not complete without a boat cruise. 5 major canals ring the old center. The best way to enjoy it is to take an open boat tour, so better picture taking can be achieved. We had previously made a reservation. The city center is practically a network of canals, along which finds Amsterdam's monumental canal houses and many different canal boats. The unique architecture really comes alive when viewed from the water and leaves a great impression. We found many houseboats along the city's picturesque canals. Designed to cope with the city's accommodation shortage, many of these houseboats have now been converted into B&Bs or luxurious boat hotels. Bicycles, bicycles, bicycles. Everywhere we looked there were bicycles. Some beautiful bridges were made just for bicycles, too low for boats to enter. Of the 1,280 or so bridges in Amsterdam, the Skinny Bridge is the most famous. It is a traditional double-leaf Dutch drawbridge for pedestrians and bicycles only. Nearing the end of the tour, we passed the National Maritime Museum with its replica of the East Indian Company's tall ship, the Amsterdam. The museum houses over 400,000 paintings, ship models, navigation instruments, and world maps, the largest collection and most notable of its kind. Back on board ship, we enjoyed a delicious dinner and a beautiful sunset as we sailed out of Amsterdam. We woke up Monday morning docked near a small village of Kinderdijk, with a whopping population of 80 people. Across from our ship was a water tower that looked like the turret on a castle. One of the great charms of the picturesque low-lying lands of South Holland are their windmills. They are not only innovative methods of water management developed in the Middle Ages, but also iconic structures that have become synonymous with the Dutch landscape. Kinderdijk got its name, which means child's dike, when in 1421 a wooden cradle was discovered floating in the water with a child in it. Among the most captivating are the 19 remarkably well-preserved Kinderdijk mills, the largest concentration in the Netherlands. Constructed in the mid-18th century, this complex hydraulic system was built to harness the power of the wind and reclaim land from the sea, making it possible to settle and cultivate the area, as well as prevent flooding. At one time, there were more than 150 in the area. This had dropped to 78 in the 1870s. Today, the total is only 28. 8 of those mills were built in 1738. They are bonnet mills, in which only the top section revolves with the wind. Built from brick and with large sails that come within 1 foot of the ground, hence their names ground sailors. Nowadays, pumping stations have taken over the job of the windmills. A tour into the windmill illustrated the inner workings of the mill and the lifestyle of those who lived during that period. It did not look like an easy life. Returning to the ship, we had lunch. The weather was so beautiful in the afternoon, we sat up on the top deck and enjoyed a mimosa while we watched one of the staff work in the herb garden. At 2:30, we had to endure safety instructions, and at 4 o'clock, we had a tour of the wheelhouse. Interesting, as low bridges approach, the entire wheelhouse lowers to allow the ship to go through, and the top deck is closed. We passed busy little towns in what is otherwise farming country. At Emmerich, we passed under the longest suspension bridge in Germany and entered our first of 68 locks that we would go through on this trip. We enjoyed another wonderful dinner and a great dessert while getting to know some of our traveling companions. Cruising up the Rhine River Tuesday morning, the magnificent Cologne Cathedral came into view. An intriguing mix of old and new, Cologne reveals its Roman heritage in the city layout and the ancient ruins that lie scattered around the town. Cologne is the 4th largest city in Germany and has 2,000 years of history. Despite its size, Cologne is a surprisingly beautiful city and has grown around the Rhine River, spoiling visitors with its endless sightseeing and magnificent buildings. Cologne is one of the country's most historic cities, founded by the Romans in 38 BC. From sunny riverside beer gardens to historic building, tourist attractions within the city of Cologne are varied, to say the least. Many of the best sights are to be found close to its breathtaking Cologne Cathedral. The cathedral was begun in 1248. The construction of this Gothic masterpiece took place in several stages and was not complete until 1880. The largest Gothic cathedral in Northern Europe, it is a magnificent church with 2 soaring spires that symbolize the city. For those hardy souls, you can climb up the 550-plus steps to one of the towers to enjoy a magnificent view of the city and its surrounding area. It is not a climb for the faint of heart. Over 90% of Cologne's historical center was destroyed during World War II. The cathedral suffered tremendous damage during the air raids. No fewer than 14 heavy bombs reduced it to a pitiable state. The Germans had the foresight to remove the magnificent stained glass windows before the air raids, therefore saving them from destruction. They now fill the interior with brilliant colored lights. Restoration and reconstruction work was not restored fully until 1956. Cologne's pedestrian-only shopping zone hosts welcoming shops for souvenir buying. We decided to take a break and people watch for a while at Peter's Brauhaus, one of the last remaining breweries in Cologne that still produces Kolschki beer. By law, it can only be produced in Cologne. We sat outside in their beer gardens, enjoying the surroundings, and for the first time in my life, I had a beer. Since our ship was docked across the river, we had to cross the bridge. It is a mighty steel structure that stretches powerfully across the Rhine. All of the trains arriving in Cologne must cross this bridge to get to the station. Lovers all around the world have a unique way of showing their affection for each other by writing their names on a padlock, locking it onto the bridge, and throwing the key into the river in order to cement their eternal bond. Concerns have been voiced regarding the extra weight being added to the bridge and the potential structural damage that could arise from these rusty locks. Once back aboard the ship, we enjoyed another great dinner in the dining room. After dinner, we went up to the top deck to enjoy the lights of the city as we departed. Numerous mountains, vineyards, wetlands, and cliffs make Germany a country of contrast. It is home to a mountainous south, flatland in the north, as well as rolling plains and rich farmland. The Bavarian Tower bid us farewell as we sailed off into the night. Wednesday morning we arrived in Koblenz, a traditional German country town at the confluence of the Rhine and Moselle rivers. A massive equestrian statue of Kaiser Wilhelm I overlooks the lovely riverside scene. Koblenz was founded more than 2,000 years ago by the Romans. Set on a hill overlooking the area is the mighty fortress Ehrenbernstein, the second largest of Europe's preserved fortress. The cobblestone streets, wood-beamed houses, ancient market square, and medieval churches recall the fairy tale Germany of old. Its abundance of cultural monuments and the historic buildings, its cozy lanes and narrow alleyways, the relaxed and happy atmosphere of its squares and river promenades make Koblenz a friendly town, making its guests feel right at home. There are 28 medieval castles, each seemingly more picturesque than the last, between Koblenz and Bingen. The tour of the Marksburg Castle was our next adventure. While many of the dramatic castles on the Rhine River are rebuilt versions of the original, for 800 years Marksburg has retained nearly all of its initial construction and stands today as the best preserved castle on the river. It sits atop a steep, isolated hill on a bend in the river above the town of Brauerbach. Its formidable terrain so discouraged enemies that the castle was never attacked during the countless wars that raged around it through the centuries. Most countryside castles began not as palaces for princes, but as armored bunkers to protect landowners, their harvest, hired hands, and the foolhardy traveler who might pass through. Some castles also protected key roads and rivers, extorting tolls from all who trespassed. The extensive tour through the castle gave us a glimpse as to what life was like during the Middle Ages. In 1945, the American artillery fire from the other side of the Rhine River badly damaged the castle. The castle has been extensively restored and is now a museum and the home of the German Castle Association, which purchased the castle for a symbolic price of 1,000 gold marks in 1900. The pantry and the kitchen area was the best preserved part of the castle. The adjoining room is the impressive Great Hall, the very heart of country life. As a combined living and dining room, leisure time was spent playing chess or making music, while rare entertainment was provided by traveling singers who would also spread news and gossip. The grim reality is that castles, while stately and large, were actually dirty, smelly, and very cold, and were primarily built as fortresses and defensive strongholds rather than stately homes. Bottom line is, they were not very nice places to live. We passed through the small chapel with its well-preserved frescoes. From there, we moved into the armory, which demonstrates the evolving armor of the ages. There was a rather large display of some particularly vicious-looking lances and swords that were used in battle. There are 12 life-size mannequins showing the various styles of armors and weapons. The castle was built from 1100 to 1117. It is the only fully preserved medieval castle on the Rhine River. Returning to the ship, we passed the quaint village of Brauerbach, and got one last glimpse of Marksburg Castle.
Castles and wine take center stage, particularly along the Middle Rhine, brimming with remarkable beauty, history, and culture. High on the hilltop sat the 12th century Stellig Castle. On the steepest river banks, grapes are still harvested by hand, a tradition dating back 2,000 years to when the Romans introduced viticulture to the area. Later, medieval noblemen built soaring castles to oversee trade, collect tolls, and defend kingdoms from marauders and power seekers. Today, the Rhine is known for its Rieslings, crisp Chardonnays, and other vintages. The Rhine begins as a trickle in the Swiss Alps and flows 820 miles through several countries to the North Sea. This river valley extends from the old Roman town of Koblenz via the Lorelei Rock to Bingen and Rudolph and includes the steep vineyards that produce the famous Rhine wines. High up on the hill, Reinsfeld Castle overlooks the village of St. Goar. On the other side of the river, St. Gorshausen lies at the foot of two 14th century castles whose names, Cat and Mouse, reflect but one of the many power plays on the Rhine in the Middle Ages. Because of the steepness of the hillside, most of the towns on this part of the Rhine have only one or two streets. This castle was built for extortion. No residents ever took residence there. Instead, a regiment of 30 soldiers kept round-the-clock vigil. As ships approached, the castle's tollmen would board the vessel, examine the cargo, and assess the toll.
Straight out of a picture book through a manic Middle Rhine is a river valley with precipitous cliffs, a castle perched on virtually every hilltop, and quaint villages lining the riverbanks.
High above Overijssel and silhouetted against the sky is the majestic 1,000-year-old Schönberg Castle, which keeps watch over the town. Overijssel has the most complete medieval city wall still standing in the whole Middle Rhine area. As we sailed past the steep hillsides that climb from the river, we could see many castles, each strategically placed to minimize its defensive positions. It is studded with dozens of medieval castles, making it a showplace of antiquity in the world. In the 50-mile stretch between Koblenz and Mainz, some 30 castles and ruins tower by the Viking waterway, seems to reveal another. Rhine travelers not only get a journey to Europe's heart, but backwards in time itself. Their fairy tale presence today makes for wonderful photo opportunities, but in centuries past, these castles enabled the feudal lords to control trade along the river. Thursday morning, as we cruised the Main River, we had a glassblowing demonstration. It was interesting to watch the process take shape. Arriving in Miltenberg Thursday after lunch, we were off to explore. The beautiful bridge crossing the Main River has been rebuilt after the original was destroyed by the Germans the day before World War II ended. Miltenberg is lively and romantic, nestled amid one of Germany's fine wine-producing regions. We strolled the streets of this medieval town, among timber-framed houses and down crooked lanes. The city is known for its half-timbered houses that line the main streets. A group of beautiful buildings spanning the 15th to 17th centuries, as well as its interesting shops and cozy taverns serving local cuisine and tasty beers and wines. Strolling along the cobblestone streets of this medieval town, it is easy to feel as though you have stepped back in time. The 13th to 14th century Miltenberg Castle dominated the town, and the beautiful Gasthof Samreisen has been hosting travelers since 1411. Miltenberg lies primarily on the left bank of the Main River. On our way back to the ship, we walked through a park, past a tower, and discovered their famous fountain. One of the most unique features of Miltenberg is a fountain near the Main River of three men peeing. it has become most famous. Once back aboard the ship and back on the top deck, we cruised back to the castle ruins at Wertheim. We enjoyed another great dinner in the dining room and returned to the top deck as we were cruising past the village of Kreutzwertheim. We had elected to take the all-day tour of Rothenburg Odi Tauber. Rothenburg is described as the grandfather of Germany's scenic routes. The romantic road from Fusen to Würzburg takes you through historic towns featuring striking buildings and historic sites. Architectural jewels include stately homes, palaces of courtly splendor, and medieval timber-framed abodes, all of which create a spectacular backdrop of riches, history, art, and culture. They were setting up for one of their many festivals while we were visiting. The Romantic Road is also Germany's festival road. From May until autumn, it is buzzing with historical festivities, entertainment, delectable food, and tangy beer. The best preserved medieval town in Germany, Romantic Rothenburg has scarcely changed in appearance for hundreds of years. In the Middle Ages, when Frankfurt and Munich were just wide spots in the road, Rothenburg was Germany's second largest city, with a whopping population of 6,000. The market square is the center of urban life in Rothenburg. The square is framed on the west by the town hall. The largest church in the city, the Church of St. Jacob, is impressive because of its size and its towers. We took a stroll partway around the wall that encircles Rothenburg. The wall connects 5 medieval gates, complete with guard towers dating from the 13th to the 16th century. The whole walled town is a museum, and you may wish to simply stroll the narrow cobblestone streets and admire the Gothic, Renaissance, and Baroque houses and fountains. The little square a few blocks south of the market square offers a charming medieval site. Standing at the right point, you can see 2 towers. This area is often referred to as one of Germany's most photographed spots. In the afternoon, we traveled to Würzburg, where we toured the residence. It is one of Germany's finest Baroque palaces, built between 1720 and 1744. One of the highlights is the cantilevered staircase. It shows the world's largest coherent ceiling fresco, which was created between 1750 and 1753. The amazing thing about the ceiling is that it is a flat ceiling, but the way it is painted, it looks like it's 3-dimensional. For centuries, Würzburg prince-bishops yielded enormous power and wealth, and the city of Würzburg grew in opulence under their rule. The Imperial Hall is a combination of marble, gold, stucco, and more incredible frescoes. Present-day Würzburg is by no means completely original. On March 16, 1945, 7 weeks before Germany capitulated, Würzburg was all but obliterated by Allied saturated bombing. The 20-minute raid destroyed 87% of the city and killed 4,000 people. Reconstruction has returned most of the city's famous sites to their former splendor. A walk through the palace gardens offered a chance to enjoy art and nature at their best. They are as opulent as the palace itself. The gardens are characterized by 8 large yews standing centrally around a circular fountain and trimmed to perfect cones. Many decorative sculptures are scattered around the gardens. Famous also are the 3 elaborate wrought iron garden gates that provide access to the court gardens. Saturday morning, we enjoyed breakfast out on the Aquavit Terrace, and we observed local residents taking advantage of the weather and spending their day at the beach. Arriving in Bamberg, we discovered the predominantly undamaged city center, with over 2,000 protected historical buildings and monuments, makes Bamberg one of the largest interconnected medieval cities in Europe. Walking through the old city's hidden corners, narrow alleyways, passing by churches, half-timbered houses, and Baroque-style facades becomes a journey through time.
Undamaged through the centuries, the town's ground plan of the early Middle Ages is still visible today. The 13th century Bamberg Cathedral is one of Bamberg's most famous landmarks. We walk through the new residence out into the rose garden where 4,600 rose bushes were in full bloom. Bamberg is scenically situated on 7 hills, each crowned by a beautiful church. It is one of the few cities in Germany not destroyed by World War II bombing. High on the hill overlooking the city was St. Michael's Abbey. That evening, we went up to the front of the ship as we were heading into another one of the major locks on the Main-Danube Canal. We discovered that there were 68 locks along our journey, some of them very small, others huge. It was amazing to see just how tight the fit was. We could reach out and touch the sides. This lock lowered the ship 36 feet. The second largest city in Bavaria, Nuremberg, was nearly destroyed during World War II. The remaining medieval city walls stretch some 3 miles and feature original gateways and 80 original watchtowers. It is infamous for its role in World War II, first as the site of Zeppelin Field's Nazi rallies, and later as the site of the war crime trials at the Palace of Justice that captured the attention of a generation. It is infamous for its role in World War II, first as the site of Zeppelin Field's Nazi rallies, and later as the site of the war crimes trials at the Palace of Justice that captured the attention of a generation. In Nuremberg, the Nazis found the ideal setting in which to carry out their activities. Dubbed the most German of German cities by its mayor due to its rich imperial and Germanic history, it was there that the fanatical party's rallies were held. The boycott of the Jewish businesses began, and the infamous Nuremberg laws outlawing Jewish citizenship were enacted. Later, painstaking reconstruction using the original stones of almost all of the city's main buildings, flattened in the January 1945 air raid, including the castle and old churches, returned the city to some of its former glory. Wandering around, we passed the home of Albert Dürer, the sculpture of the hare in the center of the Hofmarket Square. The picturesque old town is easy to walk around, and there are many beautiful sights to see. The Frauenkirche, or Church of Our Lady, overlooks Hofmarket Platz. It is famous for the glockenspiel and the ornate golden fountain. We strolled past the Von Vesti, which spans the River Prignitz. It was used as a prison in the 19th century and later as an old people's home. Monday afternoon, we arrived in Regensburg. The old stone bridge, constructed in the 12th century, is a masterpiece of medieval engineering with its 16 arches. The old city of Regensburg has now been officially designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Since it was largely spared from the bombing destruction of World War II, it is the largest medieval city in all of Germany. The old town's Neuferplatz Square is a cross-section of history, having served as an ancient Roman gathering place, a thriving Jewish quarter, a bustling market, and the site of the Nazi book burnings. St. Peter's Cathedral has existed since about 700 AD. However, due to several devastating fires, the church was rebuilt in the current High Gothic style building, completed in 1320. Regensburg has many unique buildings, such as the 5-star hotel The Goliath, with its famous painted front. You will find clock towers and partition towers. These tall houses were a display of wealth and prosperity in medieval times. They have about 1,000 Romanesque and Gothic structures that have been preserved over the centuries. The picturesque town of Regensburg is one of Europe's best preserved medieval cities, the oldest city along the Danube. Next to the old stone bridge, we found the oldest restaurant in Germany. For 800 years, they have been serving the famous bratwurst. We just had to try it. Once again, we had a delicious dinner in the dining room, and we retreated to the Aquavit Terrace to watch as we passed through the Nuremberg Lock on the Main-Danube Canal. The canal is 106 miles long, running from Bamberg on the Main River to Kelheim on the Danube River. It's comprised of 16 of the 68 locks and 122 of the 600 bridges during the trip. That evening, we watched as we were raised 81 feet in each of the next 3 locks. During these crossings, the top deck is closed and the wheelhouse is lowered, as bridge clearance is sometimes just inches. We learned that sliding gates are used in the Rhine, while the canal and the Danube use swinging gates. It can take up to 30 minutes to transition through each lock. At one point during the journey, we had the weird experience of sailing over rivers and roads. Early Tuesday morning, the ship docked downriver from Passau near the confluence of the 3 rivers, Danube, Inn, and Ilz. Passau is located near the Austrian and Czechoslovakian border. Because of the ship's location, we were bussed into the city to begin our walking tour. Founded by the Celts more than 2,000 years ago, Passau is one of Bavaria's oldest cities. St. Stephen's is home to the largest cathedral organ in the world. It has 17,974 organ pipes, 233 stops, and 4 carillons. All 5 parts of the organ can be played from the main keyboard, either one at a time or all together. The inside of the cathedral has towering ceilings that have the most incredible paintings, sculptures, covered in gold, more detail than any room should have, and yet is staggeringly beautiful. The city has long enjoyed its strategic position and grew to great economic and political power because of it. Passau was first mentioned as a Roman provincial town. With the establishment of an episcopal residence in 739, the city life of Passau began. In the 13th century, bishops became rulers of the independent small principality of Passau. In 1803, Passau became a Bavarian city. Passau has suffered numerous floods over the years. Some of the watermarks date back to the early 16th century. The watermarks on the tower of the town hall are sobering. The legacy of its past prosperity lives on in graceful arcades, colorful houses, and rococo facades. The city has a very Italian atmosphere that has led to its nickname Venice on the Danube. And indeed, Passau was part of the Roman Empire for more than 400 years. Most of the city was destroyed by fire in 1662. It was rebuilt in an Italian Baroque style, reflected in the vast cathedral, churches, squares, and former homes of wealthy merchants. The theme for dinner that evening was of Germany. The tables were decorated in red and white checkered tablecloths, the waiters in their red and white checkered shirts. A wide variety of German cuisine was presented for our pleasure, ending with a shot of Jägermeister. High on a steep hill overlooking the town of Milk, the Milk Abbey, possibly the most famous abbey in Austria, is the highlight of the Danube Valley. It is the home of the marvelous Benedictine Abbey. This Benedictine Abbey was founded in 1089, and Milk has been a cultural and spiritual center of Austria ever since. The monastic community of Milk is over 900 years old, and the black-robed Benedictine monks still stroll amidst the marble sculptures and frescoed walls. One of the highlights is the Marble Hall. The walls and ceilings are magnificently decorated, but it is the ceiling fresco painted in 1731 that is breathtaking. Another highlight of the Abbey is the Abbey Church. The church has an astonishing number of windows and is richly embellished with marble and frescoes. But there is no denying that the overall effect is utterly striking. The Abbey's splendid library contains 85,000 volumes, mostly leather-bound in bookshelves that reach up to the ceiling, plus 12 more rooms that are not open to the public but contain an additional 100,000 volumes. Monks have continually lived and worked in the Abbey for over 900 years, despite the building having been rebuilt numerous times. Having survived the Reformation and occupation by both Napoleon and Hitler, Milk Abbey is the longest continuously running Benedictine monastery in the world. We walked down the hill and through the small, quaint village of Milk. Its population 6,000, so consequently it is quite small. There were a few small touristy shops and restaurants enticing travelers to stop in. The church and the town are pretty much overshadowed by the Abbey. We continued down the pathway, across the highway and through the trees to where the Balder was docked. One last look up at the Abbey as we boarded our ship. The 22-mile stretch of the Danube between Milk and Krems is known locally as the Wakaw. It is possibly the loveliest along the entire length of this majestic river. Both banks are dotted with ruined castles and medieval towns, and lined with terraced vineyards. The architecture, the human settlements, and the agriculture use of the land in the Wakaw vividly illustrates a basically medieval landscape, which has evolved over time. Situated on a curve in the Danube, the pretty town of Dürnstein is famous for its beautiful buildings and for the castle ruins high on the hill above the town. Picturesque 16th century houses line Dürnstein's historic streets, as well as the beautifully restored former Augustinian monastery, originally founded in 1410. A beautiful blue Baroque facade and a lovely porch overlooking the Danube is now being maintained as a parish church. Thursday morning we woke up in Vienna with beautiful blue skies. We were off to see and learn about Vienna. We passed the beautiful St. Francis of Assisi Cathedral on our way. Vienna, one of the greatest European capitals for centuries, was the stomping grounds for the Habsburg rulers of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The empire is long gone, but reminders have been carefully preserved by the tradition-loving Viennese. Today, the city is grand and glorious, a mix of great and small. It is one of the world's greatest centers for art, music, and architecture. The historic center of Vienna is rich in architecture ensembles, including Baroque castles and gardens, as well as the late 19th century Ringstrasse, lined with grand buildings, monuments, and parks. The Hofburg, or Imperial Palace, it is really a collection of buildings spread over a huge area. We were able to walk through the area where the Lipizzaner horses were housed, but no time to see their show. We did get to see one watching us as we walked through. For many tourists, a ride with the two-horse carriage is one of the highlights. The Holy Trinity column is one of the most well-known and predominant sculpture pieces of art in the city. The next stop was St. Stephen's Cathedral. It has a multicolored tile roof with a diamond pattern, and two tall towers which are the most recognizable symbols of the city. At the end of the Second World War, the roof was heavily damaged. The church was reopened in 1948, and the roof was completely repaired in 1950, with ceramic tiles donated by the people of Vienna. The plaza in front of the church displays several statues of past heroes of Vienna. We had an overnight in Vienna, so we spent the evening up on the top deck, enjoying the beautiful lights of the city and the company of newfound friends. Friday morning, we had a tour of Schönbrunn Palace. The palace is located on the outskirts of Vienna. With its surrounding buildings, 1,441 rooms, and the huge park, it is one of the most significant cultural monuments in Austria. The palace was built to the rival French Versailles in Baroque beauty and importance, but the House of Habsburg lacked funds to outdo its rivaling nation France. It was first built and remodeled between 1740 and 1750 during the reign of Maria Theresa, who had received it as a wedding gift. She bore 17 children in the palace. In earlier times, it served as the summer residence to various Habsburg rulers. Habsburg monarchy fell in 1918. Schönbrunn was turned into a museum. After World War II, the palace served as offices for British military officers before being turned into a museum once again in 1955. Due to this historical importance, its beautiful location, and its gardens, this palace is one of the very top sites in Vienna. From the top deck as we were leaving Vienna at 4 p.m., we passed Danube Island. It is a long, narrow, man-made island with the Danube River on one side and the Danube Canal on the other. It is a very popular spot for locals to have their houseboats close for weekend getaways. We soon passed under the suspension bridge that connects the island and the mainland. That evening near Bratislava, we entered the Gočíkovo Lock, the only lock on the Danube between Vienna and Budapest. The difference in elevation was 59 feet, and it took 31 minutes to transit. The lock is large enough to hold several ships. It is part of the hydroelectrical project that produces Slovakia's electricity. The doors swung open and off we went. Once again, a fabulous dinner was served in the dining room. Cruising into Budapest Saturday morning, we passed Castle Hill, a limestone plateau where some of Budapest's most important medieval monuments can be found. We docked close to the Liberty Bridge, and since we had the morning free, we set off to explore. We discovered the Grand Bazaar housed in a gorgeous building. The market offers a large variety of stalls on 3 floors, selling fruits and vegetables, meats, clothes, and a whole variety of items. We strolled down the main pedestrian boulevard, checking some of the shops as we went. We resisted any attempts to purchase anything. We had no room to get anything home. After lunch, our tour passed by several buildings such as the Pestivagato Concert Hall and the Gilbert Hall, the home of the famous baths. The Doheny Synagogue is the world's largest Jewish house of worship outside of New York City. Well known for its wonderful panoramic views, our final destination was the castle-like Fisherman's Bastion and the Matthias Church. The Matthias Church, the most interesting architectural structure in Hungary because of its stark white exterior, crowned with a roof which is covered with intricate ceramic tile patterns. It has a storied history, having undergone several revisions in the past centuries. It was built in the 13th century. Since then, it has been rebuilt and modified many times, with each ruler, architectural style change, and castle siege. During the Turkish occupation in 1541, it was even a mosque. Across the Danube is the Hungarian Parliament building. It is the largest building in Hungary and the tallest building in Budapest. Buda Castle and the Chain Bridge, with its 4 lions, are also another must-see in Budapest. Unfortunately, due to how many boats were on the river, we were not able to take a night cruise to enjoy the beauty of the lights, so we had to settle for what we could see from the boat. The end has come to yet another great cruise with a great staff and the opportunity to meet new friends, Lynn and Doug Herzog from Wheaton, Illinois, and the captain, who was the only person on board 8 years ago when I cruised on the Baldur.